I'm not afraid to hide from anything that's written in the Bible, and I've prayed that the Lord will give me wisdom and help me to have the words to address some of these comments.
I'm not the one who made the comments that this guy's responding to, but I'm not going to let that stop me. So let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. One of the difficult parts of having a discussion with a theist is that we don't necessarily understand each other's position, and that makes it very difficult to have a discussion. I mean, if I were to say that all theists believe that prayer saves you from nightly hobgoblins and that they all think television is evil, well, how is that any different than them saying that atheists worship Satan and eat babies? It's really not. So I'd like you to meet YouTuber Wrangler Star, who seems to have some rather bizarre notions about what it means to be an atheist.
Men who claim to be a devout atheist, it surprises me when they get so angry about a God that they don't believe in.
Oh, geez, not this again. Look, I hate your God in exactly the same way I hate Darth Vader, and for the same reasons. No, the real problem is that religious people make nuisances of themselves. You try to get things banned like gay marriage or abortion. You deny climate change and evolution, and all in the name of a God that we don't think exists. So we're actually angry at you because of your belief in this imaginary deity, and that's why we try to prove you wrong, and that's why we get angry.
So when you see men like Dan that are so vitriolic and so angry about this, it tells you that they're on very shaky ground with their beliefs, and it's sad. It's a sad way to live, to be so confused and conflicted.
I wonder if it's really a straw man argument, if the other side doesn't actually know they're wrong, if they're not really trying to put one over on you. I'm sure it'd be really convenient for you if that were true. I can see how it would make it a lot easier to argue against our position. But it's not true. So sorry, but you don't get to have an easy refutation of our arguments.
Well, first off, let's talk about what the Bible has to say about condoning slavery. Slavery was simply a sign of the times. That was a reality in the ancient Oriental lifestyle.
Are you saying that makes it okay, that it was just something they did back then? No biggie.
And the thing that he has wrong is that it's the Bible that actually set rules and limits on how slaves could be treated.
Well, all right then. Let's have a look at what the Bible says about slavery, shall we? Now, there are a lot of different translations of the original Greek and Hebrew, but let's have a look at what it says without all the doublespeak. Exodus 21, 2-6. If thou buy a Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master have given him a wife, and she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him unto the judges. He shall also bring him to the door, or unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. In other words, bit of blackmail here. You can go free, but your wife and children, I'm keeping them, unless you stay forever and I can pierce your ear with some nasty instrument. And what does the Bible say about beating a slave? Exodus 21, 20-21. And if a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall be surely punished. Notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his money, which is a bit of a tangled translation using some of those fuzzy words I talked about, so let's look at a more accurate translation. When a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod so hard that the slave dies under his hand, he shall be punished. If, however, the slave survives for a day or two, he is not to be punished, since the slave is his own property. Yeah, that sounds really fair, really loving. Or how about Ephesians 6:5? Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart, as unto Christ. Or how about Timothy 6:1? Let as many servants as are under the yoke count their own masters worthy of all honor, that the name of God and his doctrine not be blasphemed. In other words, God has made slavery part of the rules, and if you aren't a good little slave, you're a blasphemer. I really don't think it can be any more clear what the Bible has to say about slavery.
Slaves had absolutely no rights until God came along and wrote it down through Moses and provided a conduct on how people should treat their slaves. They had rights.
My gosh, I think he actually believes that.
And the same things that I'm saying apply towards women. He hinted about women's most basic rights.
He can't be serious, can he? 1 Timothy 2:12. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. Numbers 31:17 through 18. Now therefore kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman that hath known a man by lying with him. But all the women children that have not known a man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. Holy rape slavery, Batman! Deuteronomy 20:14. But the women, and the little ones, and the cattle, and all that is in the city, even all the spoil thereof, shalt thou take unto thyself, and thou shalt eat the spoil of thine enemies, which the Lord thy God hath given thee. In other words, take the women, the children, and the livestock for yourself. You've won them, they're the spoils of war. I could go on, there's tons of this stuff, but I think you get the point. God did not exactly go around giving women and slaves all kinds of rights.
Women were, if they were walked out on or left or kicked out of the tent by their husbands, were in the most pitiful predicament, circumstances. What God did on those times was he provided rules that you couldn't just do that a woman needed to be provided for.
Because obviously women are weak and pathetic creatures, clearly inferior to men, and there was no way your God was going to say, women, you can be strong and independent, self-reliant if you have to. There was no way that was going to happen, was there?
What he's trying to do is he's trying to compare, as many people do, the ancient Oriental civilization and the way things were then with our modern culture today.
You say that like it excuses anything, like equality was just not possible back then, like if God had ordered people to be equal, they wouldn't have done it. And it's not like your God has shown back up and said, here's an update for today's world. That hasn't happened. And some people are still using passages from here today. For example, the one about women staying silent and not teaching, they use that as an excuse to bar female priests. So it is actually a valid argument to bring this stuff up.
Well, in regards to the firstborn of the entire nation, we had to set the story. We had the children of Israel, which had been taken as slaves by the Egyptian people.
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
Despite what is said in Genesis and Exodus, there is absolutely not one scrap of evidence, archaeological or in the Egyptian records, of Jews being enslaved at that time. I'm sorry, but the Bible is fiction.
So where was the justice for all of these children that had been thrown to the crocodiles or their heads bashed in by stools? Where was the justice for this? Justice, if we serve a God and a God is love and God is a just God, then justice is required.
So a bunch of Egyptians allegedly kill a whole bunch of Jewish babies, and so it's the Egyptian firstborn that pay the price when it's their parents committing the atrocities? How is that justice? Is this one of those eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth things?
All manner of human sacrifice in just the most vile society had sprung up, that man had become so corrupted that he was beyond redemption, and God needed to do something about it.
So man was beyond redemption. Apparently that was just a little bit beyond the abilities of an all-powerful God, and the only thing he could think to do was to wipe out humanity with a gigantic flood, said the all-loving God. You realize how little sense this makes, right?
Why were only the 8 saved? Well, they were the ones that got on the boat. It wasn't because that they were better than all the rest. We know from the story that they had their own issues. Had anyone else got on the boat, they would have been saved as well. God provided that opportunity.
Shadinwawa? Since when? You do realize that there is absolutely nothing in Genesis about God giving warning to anyone other than Noah? Certainly not in enough time to build their own boat. And wouldn't that have defeated the purpose, all these corrupt and vile people getting to escape the flood on boats? You do realize how much sense you're not making, right?
Are we talking about the commandments of God? Are those the lies and the corruption? Are those things that we shouldn't teach our children? Should we teach them not to murder? Should we teach them not to steal? Should we teach them not to lie?
On what planet is religion required for that? You know, I don't like being lied to or stolen from, and I can pretty much guarantee I wouldn't much care for being murdered. And I think nobody else would either. So it kind of is in our best interest to respect each other's boundaries. And a God is superfluous to that equation, wouldn't you think?
And what are you referring to? What is that the poisoning of the mind of the youth?
And now I think we're back to the stuff I was alluding to at the beginning of the video, where I was talking about how theists and atheists don't really seem to see eye to eye on what the other side stands for, what they're advocating. And frankly, I think it's kind of disingenuous of you to bring up points about which we probably mutually agree, and then say, is that the corruption you're talking about? It should be fairly obvious that it isn't. What we're really talking about when we say you corrupt children's minds is more a matter of telling them that there is a God you can't prove exists, and if they misbehave, he'll send them to a hell you can't prove exists. Telling them things like evolution isn't real, that the earth is only 6,000 years old, getting them to hate gays or try to ban abortion, all of that stuff, filling their heads with that sort of thing. That's where we start to say you're corrupting the children. It's got nothing to do with don't murder, don't steal, don't lie. Come on.
The next paragraph is the concepts of compassion, honor, and responsibility were around long before the Bible showed up, before written word even. The Bible simply, okay, so how can you prove that?
Please tell me he's kidding. Please tell me he's kidding. Dude, take a history course. Take an archaeology course. Humanity has been around a lot longer than the Bible. And do you really think they would have survived and thrived if it was just every man for himself? No, of course not. And do you really think that the people up in Norway and Sweden, up in Scandinavia who are worshipping the Norse gods like Odin and Thor, do you really think they had no compassion, honor, or responsibility before the Bible reached them? Really? No, it's up to you to prove from extra-biblical sources that those things did not exist until God handed them down.
The next paragraph, real men don't believe extraordinary claims without heavy-duty proof. Your average Christian is lazy, a lazy coward, just saying. Too lazy to do study required, too cowardly to face actual truth. Well, some are, and I'll admit to that. But so are some atheists. So you can point the finger at lazy Christians. I can point the finger at lazy atheists. Do all atheists have all of the scientific facts in their back pocket? Can they argue apologetically for everything that they believe in? Or are they simply just parroting what they've been taught or some classes that they learned in school, mistaking that for actually true investigation?
Investigate what, though? Religions over the millennia have put forth some really extraordinary out-there claims backed by not a shred of hard data. In fact, we're often told, no, don't go looking for proof, don't go looking for evidence, just have faith, believe without proof. Well, by that logic, I would have to believe any crackpot or conspiracy theorist who came down the pike. I'd be believing in Bigfoot, UFOs, the Loch Ness Monster, that Elvis is still alive, and whatever theory there is about who killed JFK that's popular this week. That's not how this works. If you're going to say that a God is real, you have to provide the evidence before I'm going to say, yeah, makes sense. Otherwise, I can say, not buying it.
So being a Christian does not equate to being lazy or cowardly. That equates to the person and that person's individual character.
Except that's not really true, is it? Because when you look in the Bible, it provides a lot of easy answers. Where did the universe come from? God did it. Where do humans come from? God did it. Why do we have morals? God did it. What happens when we die? Afterlife. Thanks to God. But when you look at the actual real-world evidence, when you investigate, you'll see that that stuff's just not true. And when you try to tell certain Christians that, they'll go, but that contradicts the Bible. The Bible is the Word of God. God's always right, so no, sorry, gotta go with the Bible, even though that the real-world evidence shows me wrong. Now that is lazy, and you're not going to find that out of most atheists.
If you really get in to the nuts and bolts of it, that evolution is also a religion. There is no definite data on that, and you have to take tremendous leaps of faith to believe in that.
See, someone was lazy and did not do their research, because no one who has actually investigated evolution could possibly say that.
Just take the ecosystem with the relationship between the animals and the plants and the flowers and one species relies upon another, and if you remove one of these species, the entire ecosystem collapses.
Oh, well, allow me to retort.
Scientists have estimated that there have been between 1 and 4 billion species in Earth's history. Do you know how many there are today? 50 million. Lots of species have gone extinct over Earth's history, and the ecosystem has not collapsed. This is another case of someone being lazy and not doing their research before making claims.
And I mean, you could take it on such a smaller scale. If you could say, what's the probability of a house falling out of the sky, landing on the ocean, or washing up on the beach, whatever you want to say, complete, with painted walls and drywall and fixtures and working sinks and electrical system and televisions and vacuum cleaners that work and all of that? You would say that given enough time that this is possible for a fully functioning house with all the amenities, the composition roof, the glass pane windows, the crystal glasses and plates and silverware, flatware and carpet, all these things, given enough time that this is possible.
My head hurts. If you think that a house is an apt analogy for evolution, then the only things you know about evolution are diddly and squat, because it doesn't work like that at all. A house is not a living organism. It does not have genetics. It does not randomly mutate. It does not breed to produce an ever-increasing chain of differences over the generations. And neither a house nor a species just poofs into existence like that. It doesn't work that way. You don't actually understand the position of advocates of evolution, and yet you're trying to argue against it. This is what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, where we're just having different discussions on different topics that we happen to use the same words for. We're not communicating. This is a problem if we want to have an actual reasonable, rational discussion.
The Bible's written, there's 66 books in it, if you consider the Old and the New Testament. The 66 books were written over a period of about 1,500 years on the most controversial subject known to man by people, as I said, in most cases who had never met. But the whole thing is consistent.
Okay, stop. Hang on. I'm glad you like a book.
However, the Bible is anything but consistent. Exodus 15:3, the Lord is a man of war, the Lord is his name. Romans 15:33, now the God of peace be with you all, amen. John 10:30, I and my Father are one. John 14:28, if ye loved me, ye would rejoice, because I said, I go unto the Father, for my Father is greater than I. Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting get understanding. Ecclesiastes 1:18, for in much wisdom is grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. Psalms 92:12, the righteous shall flourish like the palm tree, he shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Isaiah 57:1, the righteous perisheth, and no man layeth it to heart. Exodus 33:11, and the Lord spake unto Moses face to face, as a man speaketh unto his friend. John 1:18, no man hath seen God at any time. There's actually tons more of these, but I think the point is made. Don't you dare go telling me that the Bible is consistent. That book is about as consistent as an elderly cheese eater's bowel movements.
Let's see, he goes on to say much of the Abrahamic God story borrows from earlier tales from religion like Zoroastrianism and the concepts of heaven and hell came back from. And giving me the astounding evidence, you had to reach such a conclusion that God exists and wants to poison young minds. He's not really going into anything of any importance. He's just angry.
Don't insult him. I know how much you want to, but don't insult him. Okay, he's not just being angry. He's actually trying to point out that Christianity borrowed quite heavily from the religions that came before it, the religions of the people it was trying to take over, which, if you think about it, kind of calls Christianity's validity into question. Now, you seem unwilling to actually consider this notion, whether it's because you're just waving it off as the guy being angry, or because you don't actually understand what was being said to you, or perhaps because it makes you scared about your own position. But either way, the fact that you're just waving it off kind of makes you look, well, like a dumbass. Oops.
What's worst case scenario? What if I'm wrong? What would I have missed out on? Well, I wouldn't have missed out on anything. I would have had a life of peace and enjoying my family and doing the things I want to do with a blessed assurance that only comes from God.
But see, that's what's called reasoning from 1 to infinity, because what I'm hearing you say is that you get to live your life the way you want to, and therefore everyone else should be just as hunky-dory as you, whether there's a God or not. Except it's not true, because there are some things that these rules say are sins, whether there's a God or not, that some of us actually want to do, and which hurt nobody. I mean, I'm not even talking about the whole don't murder, don't lie, don't steal stuff. We agree on that. But lesbian, I'm not allowed to be a lesbian under these rules. I'm not allowed to be who or what I want to be. And I've noticed there's more than a few gay guys roaming around the world who probably feel much the same way I do. So it actually really does matter whether we follow a religion or not. It will affect your life, and not in necessarily welcome ways. Sure, you get to live the life you want to, but what about the rest of us, huh?
But what if Dan's wrong? What does he have? He has a life of anger and hatred and conflict and confusion and ultimately fear and terror and death.
Well, I hope by now you understand where the anger comes from. As to the rest of it, at least we atheists are willing to look the facts full in the face, live life with our eyes open. We behave according to the information available to us, rather than our wishes for a fantasy world come true, which is, frankly, how religion seems, since it doesn't have the facts to back itself up.
So take all the things apart and just look at it logically. Which is the better choice? You decide.
But this isn't a logical choice. In fact, it's a choice between logic and fantasy, logic and emotion. Do I go with what feels best or what the facts tell me, regardless of how I feel about them? That's the real choice. And it's the atheists who have chosen to go with logic and facts rather than what feels good. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think.